Hi, and welcome to another video. Today we'll be going through the pictures I've taken over a year ago while I was on a trip to Europe. Specifically in these pictures, we're going to be looking at the pictures I took while I was in Rome. There's about 500 or so pictures, and then we'll switch to the ones from Monaco and Barcelona. But for the next while, it'll just be Rome pictures. Without further ado, let's jump into it. Okay, so I've imported a few of these pictures. As we can see, it's about 155, so not even a fifth of the way through. Let's begin with this one. This is the first ever picture I took while I was in Rome, and this is a picture as you exit the underground train station, and you're going up to get into another train which takes you to the center of Rome. Now, where was this exactly? I don't remember, but the goal behind taking this picture was that I wanted to make it black and white with high contrast. Now, this picture, we can see a decent bit of it here is foggy and hazy. Now, the way to fix this picture, because it was taken from behind of a bus window and it has created a bit of a haziness here, I want to make this into a black and white picture so that there is that big contrast, and then boost up the contrast. And also here, this is where I would use the clarity and texture features a little bit so that it will make the lines of this concrete building a little bit more pronounced. If we bring down the exposure a little bit, specifically the highlights, and boost up the shadows, the building stands out a little bit more, but it also gets rid of what's in the background, which is the sky. If we see a before and after of this picture here, we can see that the black and whiteness that I've just put on it right now makes it much colder and much more industrial, which is what I was going for when I was taking this picture to begin with. Okay, there isn't much I want to do with this picture anyways. It's not worth spending the time to do anything more, and the only thing I could do is go to masking feature and then create a radial gradient and then identify where it is on the original picture, so it's about here, and I will make it this big roughly. Now that I've created the spot mask right on top of where the haziness is, here I will go into texture and I will boost it up artificially up to the maximum value of 100 so that this area can more fit in with the rest of the building, which is straight lines and sharp straight lines. I'll also boost up the clarity a little bit, and what we see is that this fits in with the rest of it. If we go back to the original picture, we can also see that that made a great improvement over the original with that spot masking. However, I wanted this to be in black and white, so let's put it in black and white and boost up the contrast a little bit. And I think that's that for this picture. Bring down the highlights and the whites a little bit, and that picture is done. Okay, on to our second picture. This one is of the Colosseum. Now, I actually have a few pictures of the Colosseum coming up, but let's decide between these three pictures which one is good. Now, obviously there was some construction going on down here, and that's where we will be using our crop feature. Now here, this is a much wider angle of the Colosseum, and here we have the 2/3 rule being applied, where 2/3 of the frame is occupied by the Colosseum, the rest is just a sky. And here we have it where the Colosseum is the main subject of the picture, and if we do a crop of this lower part, then it'll just be the Colosseum in the sky. Out of these three pictures, this one has to be my favorite because it has much more of the Colosseum in frame. This picture would have been a nicer picture to edit and invest time in. However, there's no clouds and there's nothing up here, so I will just show you. If we do an edit of here as such and crop it, it will be a cool picture, but then there isn't much of the Colosseum being shown. And the sky, there isn't much here to show. If there was clouds up here, it's just spots of clouds, then it would have been much more interesting. Or better yet, if this was either sunrise or sunset, where it would be golden hour, that would be amazing as well. However, this is just a little bit too plain. With this picture, the reason I like it much more than the other two is because we are getting that gradient of the sun hitting it on this face and then slowly turning into a shadow at the back face here. We are seeing the statues more visibly here, and the Colosseum, which is the main subject of the picture, is much more prominent than the sky, which there is, again, nothing there. So let's start editing this picture. What we have to do firstly is crop out that yellow construction fencing at the bottom. And then here I will take advantage of the 16:9 so that this can become a standard wallpaper for a monitor or a computer. In my opinion, this is a little bit too cold of a picture. We're not seeing the details of the stones. And this is where I want to boost up the white balance into more of a warmer tone. Now, this is the difference between what it was originally and if we boost it up. Obviously, the sunlight is becoming much warmer and the picture is becoming much more inviting. Now, just a tad more. And this is where I like. Now, this is giving a artificial sunrise color to it. Obviously, this picture was not taken at sunrise. It was taken much after. However, it was still in the early hours of the morning where the sun hitting it made it a little bit yellow. Now, overall exposure, I want to turn it down slightly because it is an overexposed frame. Contrast, in this situation, I want to boost it up so that there's that separation between the high spots and the dark spots. Highlights I want to bring down because this area is just way too overexposed and there wasn't any detail visible. So if you just bring it down slightly to the point where we can see the individual stones, it would be good. And then shadows would be areas like this area and the entire right side of the frame. So if you boost this up all the way, this is what the difference it would make. I'm just going to boost it up slightly. Whites and blacks are fine. Texture. Now, this picture, I don't remember where the focus point was, but clearly there's no clear focus. Now, this is the fault of the Fujifilm X-T2 being not the best camera. It's a perfectly fine camera, however, the autofocus system is horrible. It does not work if it's life dependent on it. And what I learned to do actually after the first half of the trip is to put everything in manual focus and use focus peaking to take all my pictures. However, here this was my first time properly using the camera on a full day basis, and what we see is that nothing is sharp, nothing is clearly in focus, and it's a fault of the camera, to say the least. Partly mine as well for not recognizing it sooner. So here I do need to boost up the clarity and texture so that the frame pops a little bit more. And then in terms of the specific colors as we go lower, now the actual Colosseum is not this color. However, it could benefit from a slight increase in the orange and a slight increase in the yellow. Again, we don't want to make this picture be fully warm. We do want that contrast between warm and cold. And right now, this is good because we have the warmer look on the left-hand side of the frame and a cooler look on the right-hand side of the frame where the sun isn't hitting it. And that's about it for this picture. This is a before and after of it. Obviously, the areas that we worked on is here. Recovered some details from bringing down the highlights and boosting clarity, and made the picture warmer and more inviting for the viewer to look at. A couple of more Colosseum pictures here. This one was taken from up and my back facing towards the sun, because we see the sun hitting from the left side here, and I am also taking the picture from this side. But then a little bit later, I go and actually shoot from the opposite direction. So I think I was up here on that hill here, and then I shoot from the opposite direction, and we see the sun right behind the sign here, and then the Colosseum is lit. Okay, so in this picture, we see the construction signs again down here. And what we want to do is actually remove that. So we're going to hold shift and then start cropping. What shift is going to do is not let a freeform crop like this. And holding shift will allow you to actually maintain the aspect ratio as you're cropping it in and out. Now, I'm going to crop it in so that we get rid of the construction sign. And then just to the top of the tree, so that we're also maintaining this line going wrapping around behind the Colosseum, so that it creates that uniformity from here, 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 and here. Now, what do we do with the top of this tree up here? We go into the remove tool, and then we put our size a little bit bigger here, and then we just go over that tree. And then we go from remove to clone. And what cloning does is it finds somewhere else in the frame with relatively the same exposure as the area that you're cloning. And it will try to take from one part and directly clone it on the other part. Just do a regular clone and then drag the source clone to where it is closely matched. Now in this area, we see a gentle gradient from the blue of the sky into the white down here. Now, in this situation, you can't do the original clone from up here because this is what it will look like. And you can't do it from here because there is the slightest bit of difference, as you can clearly see there. So what you actually have to do is bring this down to the same level so that the gradient will look the same, and then just give it a little bit of a feather, but obviously not too much where it starts giving showing the trees again. So just a slight feather so it's not obvious. Click enter, and that's that. And it looks the exact same. Now here I just noticed a little bit of a building up here. So what I'm going to do is reduce the size of this and then go in here right up to the edge, and we go into clone and we bring this down to the same level, and boom. No building, no tree. Now if we do it before and after, this is what the difference is. Okay, now let's work on the actual picture. Again, I think all these pictures were shot a little bit too cool. Obviously, being the summertime, I want the viewer to have an inviting feeling looking at these pictures. Boost up the contrast a little bit so that the darker spots are darker. Boost up the texture and clarity a little bit, but not too much. So what we just did here is the Instagram effect, where you just boost it up all the way and you think you're getting more detail in, but in reality what you're making it be is not realistic. The Colosseum looks like this in real life on the left hand side, and it does not look like this on the right hand side. So 16 and 14 is a little bit too much. We're going to bring this down to a 7, and then this down to a 4, maybe a little bit more. Boom. So here we are getting those lines being shown more pronouncedly, such as here and on these pillars. Same with all throughout the picture, so especially in these upper areas, the darker lines are a little bit more pronounced. but it's not overwhelming like it was a few seconds ago. Again, here that I will go into the individual colors, boost up the orange and boost up the yellow slightly, just so it gets a little bit more of an inviting tone. Now down here, this is highlights. I'm gonna bring down the highlights, but not too much, just a little bit so it's not so bright. Same with the whites. I'll bring it down so that we recover a little bit of detail in this area. Other than that, I don't think the shadows will do much, even if we recover them. The beauty of this picture is that it can be like this and it's good enough. Now, if we were to go to black and white, this is also interesting, but I don't think this is the time or place for this picture to be in black and white. Colored in, this looks good. Black and white, there isn't much there to see. So we're going to leave this like this. Going on to the next picture. Now here, I want to get rid of the sign, but also would like to get rid of these people and these railings. So what we have to do, so looking at this picture right now, then I just want to get rid of the trees. Again, this is personal preference. Do you want the trees in there to show a bit of character, or do you want the entire picture to be the Colosseum? That's up to you to decide, but I personally don't like the fact that the trees are here and distracting from the main subject of the frame. Now we just did the clone, but we can see that it wasn't a perfect clone, and there's a bit of a difference here. So what we'll actually do is come back to here and then feather a little bit more and then bring down the opacity slightly. In this specific clone, I will actually do the clone of half of another clone. So we obviously trace the trees down here, but again, what we have here is a gradient of the blue sky down to the white, which is where the sun is. Now if I do it down here, this works. If I do it up here, this also works. But the best thing is to bring it as close as the original clone as possible until we start getting the trees, and then move right a little bit and then further bring it down. Boom. And now if we look at the entire frame, then we have the nice smooth transition and we have the Colosseum. I'll see you guys in the next episode. Thank you for tuning in and looking at these pictures. If you want to have access to these pictures to the full JPEG file, it would be on my Unsplash wallpapers and also on my website at farzadfalfalion.com. Feel free to look at them, download them, use them as your wallpaper, spread the word, and tune in for more episodes of me editing these pictures because there's plenty more of these to come. Thank you and have a good day.